Bring 'em out, hey. Bring 'em out, yeah. Bring 'em out, hey. Bring 'em out, VIP coming live from the VIP. Heard the nightlife, lost life without me. Most feds in the state wanna see by me. The whole city got pissed, heard he got three.
Welcome to 3SN, everybody. My name is Alex St. Flavis, and with me is James, No Doubt Dotson, and Greg, the mad scientist, Bichero. It is that time of year. That time of year that gives every football fan chills up and down their spine. It is fantasy football season. And today we are going to be going over the top running backs for this coming fantasy football season. Jimmy, how's it going?
It's going. It's another day. It means it's another day closer to our draft where I get to kick your butts again.
What are you talking about? I won the league last year.
I don't think so. I mean, come on, mad scientist. Do you really think that he technically won the league? I think I still win it.
Well, I mean, there are some people that would make the argument.
I think there were some deflated footballs going on.
No, there's a lot of deflated footballs out there. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about running backs, and let's talk a little bit about the 2015 top running backs.
And we have a lot of parity going on out there. There's a lot of mixed opinion in these top 10, top 15 running backs that we have. But it's pretty clear that there's a couple who are our favorites. And coming in at number one on the list is Eddie Lacy. Greg, you have him as your number one overall. What is it about Eddie Lacy that just gets you going?
Well, first of all, if you take a look at Eddie Lacy and you take a look at Jamal Charles, it's like 1 and 1A. You could interchange them. However, the reason why I put Eddie Lacy at number one is he's a bit younger, he's in a better producing offense, and he's also put up a few more points than Jamal Charles has. So with that stated, now you can always make that argument. Well, Eddie Lacy shouldn't be the number one because he's very fragile. He gets hurt a lot, and so I mean, once again, it all depends on whether your glass is half full or half empty, and half full of what. So the way I look at it, I look at Eddie Lacy as being my number one because of the factors that he is on a better team, number one, and number two, he is a bit younger.
And I think those are both very good reasons. I'm going to go the other way around. I have it flip-flopped. I have Charles as number one, and the main reason being he's more productive out of the backfield. And it may be a little bit deceiving last year. He actually had a few fewer catches than Eddie Lacy. But if you're getting 9 touchdowns on the ground, but then another 5 through the air the previous year, 19 total touchdowns between running and receiving, that's just tough to pass up. And I think now that you also get another deep threat weapon like Maclin out there too, I think that also will help increase that running game. And of course, we're going to talk about Travis Kelce as being a stud at the tight end position as well. So I think that that ends up being a huge factor that actually can help a running back, even though when you actually are getting more targets around them.
I would agree.
I agree with everything you guys have said, so I don't feel like I need to put too much into Eddie Lacy. Obviously, one of the premier backs this year in fantasy football. I don't have him rated as high as some of my other running backs, however. But before we get into that, I'd like to talk about Le'Veon Bell. Because, to me, Le'Veon Bell, I think without the 3-game suspension, he would obviously, in my opinion, he'd be the number one running back who should be taken off the board.
Well, I would agree, but you have that 3-game suspension. So, with that stated, Le'Veon Bell is nowhere near the top.
Right, but here's the thing, though, too. You got to keep in mind
the appeal.
And just to prove the point, right now in our customizable cheat sheets, looking at those stats, if you were to project that into a full 16-game season versus a 13-game season, yeah, he goes from the number 8 running back on our charts all the way up to number 1. So, I mean, you also have to keep that in mind that, yeah, maybe I'll be in trouble for the first 3 games, but I now have an absolute stud the rest of the way through. So you got to keep that in mind, and I heard Alex say it as well. There's an appeal process that could still go through. It might get reduced. The question ends up being, though, Alex, how high on your running back rankings or how high in the draft itself are you willing to take him?
Okay, so let's say he does not win his appeal. If I'm drafting near the end of the first round, either the last or the second last, I'm taking him. If he's available, I'm taking him, because you have to keep in mind you're also getting another pick. If you're in a traditional snake league, if there's 12 people in your league, you're drafting number 12, you're getting 2 picks in a row. So if you're kind of like 11 or 12, you take Le'Veon Bell to make sure you grab him. You can grab him, and then you could take either another running back or another top player who's available. Now, if I'm in the top 5, if I'm drafting top 5 in my league, or even in the middle, I would not take him.
It's too big of a risk there, right?
Yeah. If he went through the appeal process, I'm taking him number 1 overall.
Now, Greg,
running back.
Greg, where are you gonna fit him in then?
Well, you see, once again, I'm known as the mad scientist. So, once again, if Eddie Lacy is not available, okay, and I'm picking, let's say, number 3 or number 4, I'm going to take the guy. I'm going to roll the dice, knowing full well that I'm not going to have him for 3 weeks or 2 weeks or however long. Yeah, I'll roll the dice because he is that good. He is first round worthy. Granted, you have to pick darn well your second and third rounds, but just remember this: you get him off the board and you have him on your team, you better hope he's going to produce.
For me, it is all dependent on the type of league, because if you're in a touchdown-heavy league, he's not exactly putting the ball in the end zone a million times. 8 touchdowns his first year total, 11 touchdowns total last year. He's more about the yards. He had over 2,000 total yards rushing and receiving.
Right.
So if you're in a PPR-style league, 83 catches last year. What more do you need to say? But if you're in more of a touchdown-heavy league, I'm not touching him, honestly, until possibly even late second round in that regard. It's all about how your league is set up. And obviously, if you have to be prepared no matter what. If you go in there with the attitude that I'm going to take him, you need to have the rest of your draft kind of pre-planned out to know what you're going to be going for.
You also have to be aware, too, they signed D'Angelo Williams. Now, he's obviously not the player he used to be, but you kind of wonder how much of an impact he's going to have. Even when Le'Veon Bell comes back, like how much of the workload he's going to take away from Bell, too. You know what I mean?
Well, I just don't see that happening. I really don't. So, with that stated, is Le'Veon Bell first round worthy? Yes, depending upon the league. I would agree to that. Where would you fit him in your in your whole scheme of running backs? Is he a number 1, like I'm proposing to be an Eddie Lacy? Is he a Jamal Charles type, or where is he? Would he fall into number 3, number 4? Where do you put him, Alex?
If he wasn't to suspend him, he's an Eddie Lacy type. He's right there at the top, in my opinion.
Well, I understand that, but with the suspension, with everything the way it is now, where do you put him?
Maybe 7, 8-ish. Around there.
And it sounds like you guys are much more willing to take the risk than I am. I think legitimately, though, he can be anywhere in that essentially middle first round type caliber, running back number 4, 5, 6, something like that for sure. It's all about whether you're willing to take the risk for it, and that's just it's how mad do you want to be, really.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before this turns totally into the Le'Veon Bell show, let's finish out the top 5, our running backs. Close behind at number 4 is Adrian Peterson, and at number 5 is Marshawn Lynch. Let's talk about AP first. Greg, coming off of a year, he played 1 game last year. Pretty much an entire season off. Is that good? Is that bad? What can you expect from AP?
Well, I think AP is going to be playing like a man possessed because, first of all, he had an unjustified off year last year. For what he went through, this is a guy that you're looking at him as being the number 1 running back in the NFL. I see him having a huge year this year. I actually have him, I believe, at number 4. But I think we missed a player in this whole mix, and that's DeMarco Murray.
Well, he comes in at number 6. We'll talk about Murray in a minute. I'll let you say your piece about him here in a second, because Alex actually has a bit of a shocker in terms of his love of Marshawn Lynch. He comes in 5 overall, but you have him a little bit higher in your rankings, don't you, Alex?
I do. I appreciate the presence of a tight end and how it affects the whole scheme of an offense, or you guys don't do it enough. I think it might be a combination of the two. Now, he did see his workload decrease last year, but his production, both yardage and touchdown total, it went up. So I still think his fantasy outlook is obviously bright. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of projecting something around 1,370 rushing yards, 30 catches, 300 receiving yards, 14 total touchdowns. I just feel like the whole dynamic of the offense is just going to get better. And I still have my doubts about Adrian Peterson and, even Charles and Le'Veon Bell. I'm going from a safe standpoint. I'm putting Lynch at number 2.
And here's the thing about both Lynch and AP. They're starting to get old. They're AP's already at 30. Marshawn Lynch is at 29. That 30 number is real big when it comes to a running back. So that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Let's talk about Adrian Peterson. And Dawson, you hit the nail right on the head. It seems like when any top-tier running back gets to that big 3-0, for whatever reason, that 1 year makes such a difference, and they just completely hit a wall and disaster happens.
But this is a guy that had the year off from football.
Well, I was just going to say that. So for someone who's a freak like Adrian Peterson, that can benefit him. So it's not like he's, ran out of gas. He had a whole rest. So, I think with Adrian Peterson, I think the pendulum could swing either way. I really do. So I would not be surprised if he hit that wall. I think there's a pretty good chance it will.
Well, who are the only 2 running backs who have had double-digit rushing touchdowns each of the past 4 years? We just said them. AP, Marshawn Lynch. You can't go wrong with either of them. And I think the concern of hitting that wall for both of them, honestly, is what keeps us from putting them all the way up into the top guys with the Lacey's and the Charles for sure. But I promised Greg we would talk about his big guy DeMarco Murray because you absolutely love the new era with DeMarco Murray in the Chip Kelly offense. Tell us about it.
Well, first of all, I am just I've always been completely infatuated with DeMarco Murray, even when he first came on board and made that big splash down in Dallas. And when Chip Kelly got him, and of course, replacing Shady McCoy, everybody's like, what? But here's the big thing. If you take a look at the analysis, you read the analysis that Evan Smith wrote about DeMarco Murray and LaDainian Tomlinson wrote about DeMarco Murray, both of these people stated that DeMarco Murray could have had 2,500 yards rushing last year if he had stuck with the system and he had done what he was supposed to have done. And this is where Chip Kelly and the system player comes into play. If Chip Kelly gets this guy and works this guy, and this guy works with Chip Kelly's system, which we expect him to do, I expect huge numbers out of DeMarco Murray. And you will see the fact that Chip Kelly would be considered to be the mad scientist of the coaches out there for what he's done.
I think there's going to be no middle ground with Murray this season. He's either going to have an amazing all-pro year or he's going to be a complete flop. Now, let's keep in mind, he's a big injury risk. He's coming off a huge workload last year. He won't have Dallas's offensive line either. And you want another reason to stay away from him? Evan Mathis's release is disastrous for Murray's outlook. LaShawn McCoy struggled to run the ball with Mathis last season. So I think Murray will have the same issue. I kind of feel like Chip Kelly's almost over his head. So, and I just feel like it was shocking not to see Murray get unharmed last year, and I don't think that's going to happen again. I just feel like it's natural that Murray will see a decline in production, especially that he has no longer has, Dallas's offensive line. So.
Yeah, but you know what? No, Philadelphia's line is just as potent, just as stout. You've got a whole new system over there. You have a whole new quarterback over there. I mean, this is all brand new. This thing's going to come together brilliantly. The Philadelphia experiment is going to definitely be fruitful. I really see DeMarco Murray, and that's why I have him at my number 3.
Oh, and here's the thing you got to keep in mind, though, is that he's not the only running back out there. You still got Darren Sproles as a third down back who Chip Kelly loves and trusts. He's going to be in there more often than you want to say. And don't forget, Ryan Matthews just went over from San Diego as well. So I'm worried maybe that there'll be touches taken away. Will he still have a solid year? Great. Am I expecting a dominant year like he had last year? Absolutely not. But at the same time, I'm seeing him drop to near the end of the second round. If I can be getting him at pick number 20, 22 overall, I am taking that in a heartbeat. And I've seen it in most of my mock drafts so far that he's dropping that far because a lot of people don't trust all the scenarios out there in Philly. So don't be hesitant on him. I wouldn't say reach for him either, though. But obviously, I'm not as mad as that mad scientist over there. Now, rounding out our top 10 with DeMarco Murray, number 6, we got C.J. Anderson at 7, Matt Forte at number 8, Arian Foster at number 9, LaShawn McCoy at number 10. The one that I want to point out here is, why are you guys hating on my boy, Matt Forte? I don't get it. I have him actually ranked as my number 3 overall back, and the main reason being, he had 102 receptions last year on top of 266 carries. There's no other running back who touched the ball more last year other than Le'Veon Bell and DeMarco Murray. So you put him right up there with you, and especially when you have a quarterback who can't do anything, guess who they're going to always give the ball to, either running it or out of the backfield. I just can't believe none of you guys have Forte higher in your list.
I forgot Forte played football still.
Well, that tells you something right there. He's a quiet assassin now, isn't he?
He plays behind Jason Cutler.
I mean, it is amazing how much research I did with running backs, and that guy did not cross my mind even once.
Well, and I'll play my own devil's advocate. I know Mark Trestman isn't there anymore. I know that he's not going to be getting 100 receptions. He won't be getting nearly as many catches. But guess what? Even before Mark Trestman, he was still a beast out of the backfield. So, I mean, I just don't see how you can pass up on a guy who is going to touch the ball that many times, that many different ways throughout the course of a year.
Number
and not
3,
have
though,
team.
Jimmy? Number 3?
Yeah, number 3, because I know what he's going to produce. I have him ahead of the Petersons and the Lynches because, again, I don't know which one's going to be possibly dropping off. I'm going to take consistency. You know me, consistency wins. I'm the value guy.
I will give you this, Mr. Dodson. Forte is a value pick. No doubt about it. And at number 3, and I think it's a bit inflated, but, he will produce. I would have Forte in the top 10. I don't have him as anybody special. But only because of the fact you've got Cutler at quarterback, and you have an inconsistent offense. If you had a more consistent offense, yeah, you can make. Where would Eddie Lacy be with Jason Cutler at quarterback?
Where would anybody be with Jay Cutler at quarterback? Look at it the other way. Where would Matt Forte be if anybody else in the NFL was at quarterback? I guess that's the part I'm going to kind of look at, is that he's able to do this. And do you really expect him to stay there?
I feel as if this is also kind of a testament, at least to me, how I am very unimpressed with the running backs this year. Running backs are known to be kings. You got to get one of these king running backs. You stack up your team with running backs, you're good to go. I just feel like this is such a weird year with so many scenarios and what-ifs with revolving so many running backs, whether it be Forte or Lynch or Peterson or Murray or Le'Veon Bell. I mean, like, I just kind of feel like you don't got to go out of your way to get one of these backs this year because they're going to be available in the third and fourth rounds.
Right, and you said it right there, because after we get through this top 10, listen to the big names, and I say that very sarcastically, the big name running backs that round out our top 15. You got Jeremy Hill, who's in his second year. You have Justin Forsett, who pretty much just came on out of nowhere last year. Alfred Morris, Jekyll and Hyde. Speaking of Hyde, Carlos Hyde. And, then a rookie in Melvin Gordon, and Mark Ingram is down there, Lamar Miller. And those are the type of running backs, not big names, not sexy picks. I mean, you said it right there, Alex. Greg, expand upon that. What's the ideology in, taking maybe, say, a lot of these mid-range running backs and maybe passing on some of the quote-unquote big-name running backs in favor of other positions early on?
Well, first of all, you mentioned the name, Melvin Gordon. He's going to be the main person in San Diego. So, with that stated, he's already setting himself up for success. So you can get a Melvin Gordon maybe in the 9th or 10th round and still have a decent running back attack. So, with that stated, it's, there's a lot of value out there. You don't have to go, and go hog wild here.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that with the fact of being a starting running back. You can get a starting running back in most projections, even as low as number 30, 33. Even I've seen one down as low as number 37 on some lists. Duke Johnson from the Browns, Darren McFadden from the Cowboys down there. There are starting running backs who are going to be available later in your draft. I would keep those guys highlighted on your list and make sure you don't pass them up. If you can get a starting running back in the 8th round, I'll take that any day. I don't care what team he's on.
That's kind of what I'm driving at. Like, I honestly feel like, for me, this is going to be one of the first years where I'm not going out of my way to get a quarterback or running back. I feel like I want to stack up on receivers.
And you're 100% right, because there is, much more talent on the receiving end of things than there is on the running back side.
Exactly.
Yes, definitely. Now, we mentioned Gordon. We mentioned, obviously, a rookie back. Rookie backs last couple of years have been, not exactly the best things in the world to have. Are there any of the other rookies that really stick out? Todd Gurley, for example, Tevin Coleman with the Falcons. Do any of them really trip your trigger that you're going to maybe take a little bit of more of a reach on than anybody else? Amir Abdullah with the Lions, even?
I would say no. Just really simple no.
I mean, I think Melvin Gore is probably the one that's going to have the most upside.
Yeah, he's the one that seems to be in the best situation. Todd Gurley, you don't know what kind of offense you're gonna see with the Rams, and he's also coming off the injury, so you probably aren't going to see a full season with him either.
And remember when Ryan Matthews was the rookie, and when he was healthy as a rookie, Philip Rivers, relied upon him heavily, and I think you're going to see that again with Melvin Gore.
Yeah, I think it's very possible. I also think that you should keep your eye on Amir Abdullah, though, because I have a feeling that he could turn into a new Joique Bell. I know that, Greg, you especially were in love with Joique Bell, and I really think Amir Abdullah can stay, if he can stay healthy, he'll jump right in and take over that role pretty darn quickly.
Oh, yeah, I would agree with that.
Now, the question that always ends up coming up when we talk about running backs is we got to talk about the idea of the handcuff. And for you fantasy football newbies out there, that means you pick the starting running back on a team. You're also going to make sure that you get their backup running back on that team, barring injury. Or honestly, there were times last year where I would start both running backs at the same time if they were doing a split running back by committee. It was very possible I could be doing that. What do you like in the benefits of that, and is there ever a time that you don't go that route, Greg?
Well, I've never really enjoyed handcuffs, only because the fact that it kind of limits you out there. You're putting all your eggs in one basket. I've always liked to try to get as many productive scoring opportunities as possible from as many different teams as possible. So I try to stay away from that. Of course, for instance, you have Arian Foster. If you get Arian Foster, you definitely want to, get his backup, only because of the fact that Arian Foster is pretty much like a crystal chandelier at running back. He breaks down quite often. But on the same token, do you really want to get his backup and hope that his backup is going to do so well? Or do you really want to spread it out and try to get somebody else out there that can actually make as many yards or, be as productive as the other guy? So I kind of look at choosing the latter rather than the former.
Right. Well, if I'm going to go anyway with the handcuff idea, I'm going to look at an example of, say, the Saints. I'm going to get a Mark Ingram because he's the big-time back who's going to be getting the majority of the carries, but I'm also going to try my darndest to get a C.J. Spiller later, not only because he's a third-down back, he's going to be getting lots of catches out of the backfield, he's going to get plenty of opportunities to hold the ball, but one injury, and all of a sudden now he went from a third-down back who was on the fringe of being a flex player to being a guaranteed starter in a fantasy league. So that's the type of guy I'd be looking at for a handcuff.
Yeah, but on the same token, do you really want to waste a draft pick on a handcuff when you can just ride the waiver wire?
Well, that is true, but at the same time, if I know, like, for example, who is Eddie Lacy's backup? Probably somebody who's not going to be drafted. Him, I'm not handcuffing. But somebody like a Mark Ingram whose backup will be drafted, I could say the same thing with say, a DeMarco Murray, and especially being an injury-prone type guy, like DeMarco Murray has been known to be.
Then you look at Sproles.
Then I'm looking at getting Sproles. I probably won't go as early as you would need to get a Ryan Matthews, but I would definitely look at getting Sproles at that point. So that's where I land in the area of the handcuff. The last question that I wanted to ask for Alex is, what do you think about the guys like the Darren Sproles, the Danny Woodhead, Shane Vereen? You can even throw in C.J. Spiller now that he's in that role. These pass-catching running backs. Joy Bell's been the prime example the past couple of years. Sometimes it feels like he was getting more catches than he was getting actual rushes. Is there a huge benefit in going with a mainly PPR-type running back, Alex?
I think so. I mean, look at the type of NFL we have now. This is not your 2010 NFL. I almost feel like a completely different game. This is a pass-first league, and especially with seeing, at least in my opinion, how weak the running backs are this year, I feel like they could be decent contributors to your team. Now, I'm not saying go pick one up early, but usually kind of in the later rounds of a fantasy draft, a lot of people get more lenient with their picks. They kind of go for, I guess, quote, reaches. If these guys are, in the middle rounds or later middle rounds, you take them. I
definitely would. I would definitely go. These are your value guys. These are the guys that are going to get you those points. You have to take a look and see how they're going to be used. This is one of the advantages of watching preseason football, to see basically where do these guys fit into their offensive schemes. But, if these guys are going to be used on a regular basis, yes, you definitely look at the Sproles. You definitely look at these guys, the Vereens of the world. They will get you those points that you need. These are the guys that if your star players should suddenly get injured, you actually have some people that can actually you could actually put together a team.
And like always, keep track of your league. If you're getting lots of points for receiving yards, or the new trend going on is that running backs are going to get more points PPR-wise. Like a running back will get a full point PPR versus a wide receiver will only get a half point PPR. That's becoming a very common trend right now in fantasy football. So make sure you know your league, like we always say, and check out our cheat sheets to kind of help you out in that regard as well. And that's really all it takes, is if you know your league, because that can change your entire draft strategy around, like we said, whether you're going to take Bell early or late, whether you're going to take a Marshawn Lynch versus a Matt Forte early versus late. It all depends on how that league is set up.
I feel as if I'd almost prefer a pass-catching running back compared to a traditional pound that rock running back, considering the type of NFL we live in today. Maybe that's why I'm so high on Le'Veon Bell.
Well, and how many pound it running backs are there out there, right?
Still, I would still attack a running back like Le'Veon Bell, number one, if I could.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's our analysis here. Well, do you have something to say, Alex? No?
Just get your popcorn ready. It's going to be a fun NFL season, I feel like.
That's our analysis here. As you can tell, the Mad Scientist has a little bit different approach than the Saint, and, of course, the Valiant Mr. Dotson. But that's why we do these shows, because not everybody drafts like everybody else. So with that said, get your popcorn ready. It's going to be a fun one.